So my name is Mike Myatt. I'm a Senior Director for Climate Resilient Water Systems at EDF. And EDF's water team is focused on groundwater. So we bring together science and policy and tools with the goal of sustainable groundwater management across the West and now starting to move into other parts of the world. My specific role is to lead our California water program. So given our focus on groundwater, it means we're squarely involved with strong support for SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And all of those that are working so hard around the state to make it realized, getting to a sustainable condition. We really wanted to support the creation of a tool to help all of those that are working so hard. It's a really tough task, this law, and the more tools and support you can put in the hands of the leaders out there, the better. And so that's why we're EDF's part of this, why we got involved in the first place. I'm here, I think I was invited up here partially because I've had a kind of unique, different roles on this team. I've been in different places at different times where I got to be engaged with this. And so I'll use that a little bit to give you some context and history for just a little bit before we start to get into the panel and kind of the main point of bringing this all together today. So back in 2018, when I think it was 2018-ish, at the time I was a program officer at the Water Foundation, and I was approached by Christina Babbitt at EDF and Eric Averett from Rosedale Rio Grande Water Storage District, and had an opportunity in the philanthropic world to be able to consider providing funding support for tools and things like this. And I wanted to mention Christina and Eric by name specifically, even though they're not here, because they were real visionaries for this from the very beginning, and able to see the possibility where it could lead, along with SGMA, who are now part of the ESA, and the development team have been fantastic. They deserve a lot of credit for this, so I just get to ride on their coattails a little bit, but they got it started. And from the very beginning, all involved really wanted it to be open source. That was really important for a few reasons. One, we knew that GSAs would be needing to grapple with groundwater accounting and managing their water going forward a lot more. And we knew that a tool that was focused and affordable and easy to access and scalable would be the best way to do that. One where any user in the future who would build out a new feature in the tool or the platform, that it would be available to anyone in the user community at that point. So reduce the costs and really help it grow. So that was something that was really important. It was also important that it be built from the ground up. So we met a lot with Eric and his team at Rosedale and their landowners and farmers, and that was where we started. We wanted to create something that was useful and necessary and would help them. So that really guided that first iteration of the platform that led us into the next phase. And so that's where I had a little bit of a different role there. I was at the time the chair of the board of directors for the California Water Data Consortium, and the consortium got involved in this project, bringing together state and federal funding. And the consortium has played a really important role being an independent voice, a trusted voice, and really helping the platform scale into the second phase. So after the first project, that's where we started to bring on additional pilot partners from the Merced Subbasin to Yolo County to Pajaro Valley, and different places of the state. And this wouldn't have been possible without funding support from the Federal Bureau of Reclamation, and in particular, the State Department of Water Resources. So we really appreciate and are grateful for that funding. I want to call out Steven Springhorn and Keith Wallace, in particular, the entire SGMA team, as well as all the grants manager folks behind the scenes that actually make things happen and move. We really appreciate getting to work with them as well. Throughout the process, we've also convened experts. So we've had technical folks and policy folks that we have regularly engaged with and incorporated feedback from them. We thank and appreciate all of their contributions and support throughout the process. So, thanks to the support of DWR and the first in line, the local leaders that were willing to raise their hand and be early adopters of this, we've really been able to expand and kind of blow up the platform into something that is ready to use today. You can see in this slide we've got some folks that are fully deployed and they're using the platform right now. We've got a handful of those. We've got several that are kind of at the demo or pilot stage, and we're even hearing interest outside of California. Jim on the next panel will speak a little bit to some of that, but we're having interest in places like Nebraska and Kansas and Oregon. So the point is it's ready to use now. So some of you are here because you already know what the platform is and you're eager to give us your feedback and join the hackathon. We're excited for that. Others, maybe this is the first time you've ever seen this, and so we're gonna do a demo later, so you can really get into it, so I promise I'm not gonna digest everything that this does, but I thought it might be good for you at least to get a screenshot of what this looks like before we get into the panel and start hearing from folks who are using it. So this is just like what it would look like if you had a login account in the platform. And it's very analogous to like your financial institution at home, logging into your bank account, and you can see your various accounts, your savings account, your checking account, you have a loan or some assets that are on there. And all of that is kind of held in this, but it's for managing your groundwater resources. And it's also a budgeting tool. So it's a place where, just like managing your budget at home, you need to know what your income is and your expenses and your assets and so forth. This gets down into the level of like your land that you're holding in different places. And it's got mapping features, and you can see how much water you've been allocated, and then track how water is being used along the way. So it's a really useful tool for that. I'll leave this up for a moment. This is our website if you want to go find it, and email. If you sit in Clinton, then email to that, just kind of info Groundwater Accounting. Someone on our team will get it in the hands of the right person to help you, regardless of the level of detail of your question. So I wanted to speak just a minute to also the timing of Sigma, not for long, because I'm sure Steven's going to talk about this next, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but we've moved it generally from the planning into the implementation phase of Sigma. And so it really feels like the right time for this tool to be available and ready for us to use. So we're really excited about our timing of kind of being ready for prime time at the same time that this is going to be really needed out there. As GSA managers are implementing management actions and sort of making real the plans they worked so hard to put together, having a tool like this is really helpful to manage those resources. Sigma is really hard. We hear about that a lot. That is true. I also hear sometimes how the hard part hasn't even started yet. That's all in front of us. Which feels like a little bit of a disservice to if I were a manager who spent the last decade setting up governance structures and building out boards and engaging with my farmers and communities, and hiring consultants, writing multi-thousand-page plans and building indicators and working with regulatory agencies. It's not hard yet, but I think the folks that have done all that also know how hard it still is. And the good news, I think, is you can look around the state in a lot of places and see people at the moment and are doing a great job, and they just need support, and tools like this can really help. So we're building momentum, and having the ability to have better and greater information and technology empowers tools like this, and it just makes it easier for the folks that are really doing hard work, and we're excited to get to play a small part in helping lead towards sustainable groundwater management. So let's get into the day. A little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't found the restrooms yet, they're kind of across the hall by where you came up the stairs and registered. It looks like you have to enter a code, but unless you want to chill here until after 6 p.m., it'll be okay. You can just go right in. There's snacks that can be found out there if you get hungry today, so at the break you can look for that. We're going to be splitting into a couple of rooms later after the panel, and folks will be staying in here for a demo if you want to do that. If you have a sticker that's saying to the hackathon, you'll remember that there's prizes, so we look forward to getting your good ideas there. And I think that's what I've got. So I'm going to get started with introducing Steven, and we'll bring the panel up. So Steven's going to take over kind of MC duties now and moderate the next panel. So this is Steven Springhorn. He's a supervising engineering geologist who manages the technical assistance section within DWR's Sustainable Groundwater Management Office. Since joining DWR in 2005, he has focused on technical and policy activities related to California's groundwater monitoring, management, and data publication. And now we know should find his day in mission the 20-year anniversary with DWR as well. So, Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Mike. And we have the panel members join us as well. Thank you all for being here today. I share the gratitude that Mike just conveyed for you all being here today, our panel members to speak with us here today, and just all the hard work that's been going on to get us here today. And as the end of the beginning, as you were saying, Mike, and we have a bright future ahead. So, just wanted to say that, again, I'm Steven Springhorn, I work at DWR, and I lead our groundwater technical assistance activities here. I also have had the pleasure of being the contract manager alongside Robin Grimm for the last 3 years with the contract that has been supporting a good chunk of this work. And just want to highlight that today is a special day because it really reflects all the hard work that the whole team has put in. And just really proud of everyone that has put that work in, shoulder to shoulder with local agencies. Mike, as you said, the brave local agencies that stepped up and said we need something to happen and to move Sigma forward. So just big shout out to the consortium, ESA, EDF, Olsson's, and all of the rest of the team that has been part of this. And I think that's been the secret sauce really of this platform it's been developed alongside local agencies and with local agencies for local agencies. And that's critically important for it to be useful and used in the industry for these very tough decisions and tough management actions that are taking place day in and day out and will for forever, essentially, in California water. So I also wanted to highlight that today is also a special day in California. So today is actually the 175th birthday of California becoming a state. So I don't know which one's more important, but one has a little bit of a legacy. And I just want to also highlight there's a block party going on at the Capitol. So once you've used all your energy up on the hackathon and all this stuff today, there's free food trucks and activities and like a drone show or something after dark over there. So I encourage you to check that out. But I do want to say that, way back in 1850 when California became a state, and where there were more grizzly bears than groundwater wells back then, we know that a lot has changed, right? And water management, our use of water, and especially groundwater, our reliance on groundwater has changed. And that means we have to come up with new and innovative ways to figure out how to manage the resource for now the 40 million or so Californians that live here, and the ecosystems that remain here and are being that need to be here as well, and communities and everything else. So just want to say that groundwater, I'm biased as a groundwater person, that's the most important resource in California, and obviously, or not obviously, but most times the most stressed resource in California. And as Mike said, under Sigma, local agencies like yourselves and many others, 250 plus across the state, have been are a decade into managing and making those hard decisions. And there's the old phrase, you can't manage what you don't measure. But there's a new wrinkle to that, I would say, that you can't manage California water without managing groundwater. And that's what you're doing. It's super important, and we have to do that to be successful as a state. So I think that's where the Groundwater Accounting Platform really comes in, right? And knowing that, as Mike, you said, Sigma requires innovation, adaptation, putting implementable tools in the hands of locals so they can do what they need to do, working with their local communities, and collaboration, and working with folks on the ground. And so I'd see there's three really main things that this platform has really brought about and will continue to build on is bringing people together in a consistent way, because as we know, there's a million different things going on in groundwater. You can't see it, and people have, me being a geologist, there's a lot of arm waving going on, and but consistency is incredibly important, and standardization. And by doing that, you build trust in transparency, which is also something this platform has been building and will continue to build, and all of that, and to then make informed decisions on the management side, which we'll hear a lot of how that's going on the ground, positives, and some of the remaining challenges. So with that, again, thank you, and excited to introduce our panel. And these folks with their teams have been working very hard and implementing things, saying what's working, what's not, and again, making the tool, the platform the best it can be. So we'll start here with Matt Beaman, who is the Groundwater Regulatory Manager with the Merced Irrigation Urban Groundwater Sustainability Agency. And so each panel member is going to do about a 3-minute intro, set some context, and then we'll just go down the line. So we'll start with you, Matt.
Well, thank you. Mike called us brave, and I don't know if we had a choice, but we're here, and I think the Groundwater Accounting Platform has been a really great opportunity for all of us here. And there's probably, it's not all three of us as water managers, there's a lot of overlap between our jurisdictions, so there's probably some intention there, and hopefully we'll get to talk about that. So I work for the Merced Irrigation Urban GSA. We are made up of 7 member agencies that include the cities of Atwater, Livingston, Merced, 3 small water providers, Lada CSD, the Grand CSD, and Winter Northern Sanitary District, and then the overarching is that the overarching boundaries generally align with Merced Irrigation District. So we're a little bit, not unique, but the district is a conjunctive use district. We've been around for a long time, but when we set policies, when we're thinking about the accounting platform, we are considering both irrigation and urban uses too. So those are part of the core fabric of what we do when we're thinking about these things. The MEGUSA board in the last few years has adopted what I call a few milestone implementation policies or actions. So we've adopted a well registration requirement for all wells within the GSA's boundaries. We've spent a couple of years focusing on ag wells, and we have about all of those registered, plus or minus. And then the board also adopted a groundwater allocation at the Sustainable Groundwater Basin. It's 3.3 acre foot per acre over a 3-year period, and growers get to manage that how they see fit. They could use it all up front, or they could spread it out over 3 years. So I think in the context of the accounting platform itself, we've had a fun opportunity here to kind of build the ship as we're not sinking, as we're floating it, as we're sailing it, and it's been a really great learning experience in a lot of different directions. The push and pull of developing policy versus building functionality in the accounting platform, and it is. I'm happy and proud to say that it's operational today. There's always improvements to make, but we're moving full steam ahead. So.
Thanks, Matt. All right. Next, we have Lacey McBride from who is a Water Resources Manager from Merced Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Thanks, Lacey.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to be here too. I'm really excited about this. We're excited to use the Groundwater Accounting Platform. I am actually the Water Resources Manager for Merced County, and Merced County is a member of the Merced Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Agency. And so it's appropriate that I'm sitting right next to Matt because we're the GSA that is surrounding the Merced Irrigation Urban GSA. So Merced Subbasin GSA includes all of the unincorporated outside of the water district land that the county represents, and then we include a handful of water districts that are groundwater dependent as well. We've got a couple of water districts that do have subsurface water, but in the grand scheme of the whole GSA, It's really just a groundwater dependent GSA. It's about 335,000 acres, and 170,000 of that is irrigated. So we also have a lot of rangeland with our irrigated land in the Merced Subbasin GSA. And Merced County represents a large portion of it, and Merced County also provides kind of the staffing support to the GSA as well. And one of the, being a groundwater dependent GSA, this GSA knew that in order to achieve sustainability, demand management was going to have to be really important, and that was going to come in like a pumping reduction program and an allocation. And so that's kind of what led us to wanting to have a better understanding of water use by parcels and water use for the growers. And the Groundwater Accounting Platform was knowing that an allocation was in the future for this GSA, and how are we going to manage that allocation and implement that allocation, and most importantly, how are growers going to manage an allocation and implement an allocation program. And so that's kind of how we identified the necessity of having this accounting program. So, I don't know, where do you want me to go? Yeah.
No, that's a great overview, and we'll get into more details. All right, so our next panel member is Mike Tietze, General Manager for East Turlock Subbasin GSA.
Hello. Yeah, thanks also for putting this on. I'm real excited. We're very excited about the Groundwater Accounting Platform. We are a GSA in the eastern part of the Turlock Subbasin, that's the name. We're about 140,000 acres, about 100,000 acres of that is cultivated. Mostly in permanent crops, so about a little bit under 60,000 acres in almonds. We also have various other tree crops, vines, and then the rest in various annuals and forage. And we have some dairies and some poultry farms in our area as well. Very few communities. The communities that we have tend to be on the smaller side. Our neighbor, the West Turlock Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Agency, it is further down in the valley. It consists of land served by Turlock Irrigation District and urban lands. So we are a joint powers authority. We have Merced County and Stanislaus County are two of our members. Then we have 3 different district members. One of them is we have a small area that's served by Merced Irrigation District, about 4,000 acres. And then we have a fairly large area that is, quote unquote, served by East Side Water District, which is a water district that interestingly doesn't have any water. And then more larger landowners there, and then the Lico Cortez Water District, which also interestingly doesn't have any water, is mostly smaller farmers. So these districts that don't have any water actually farm for precisely that reason. They recognized quite some time ago that depending 100% on groundwater was not going to be sustainable. And that's been a big part of our engine, has been farmers that really get it. And as I started to work in this area, that was one thing that I was really impressed by, is that these farmers were really on board and innovative, trying to find solutions for how they can make things work with less groundwater reliance going forward. We knew from the get-go, as we were putting together our adaptive management program and our allocation, which our allocation unit is the parcel, our measurement unit is the field, we're using ET. We knew that we were going to have some kind of a management tool and some kind of a grower-facing platform and decision tool. So we shopped around a bit and landed on the Groundwater Accounting Platform. So I'll just leave it there.
Thank you, Mike. And rounding out the panel, we have Jim Schneider, who's a hydrogeologist and technical expert for water resources at Olsson's.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here. Olsson is a full-service engineering company headquartered out of Lincoln, Nebraska, where I live currently. And I've been with Olsson for about 10 years. Prior to that, I was with the Nebraska Department of Natural Resources, an agency that has very similar authorities to the DWR. And I joined the DNR in 2006. And I should say, to back up a little bit, Nebraska put in place the Groundwater Management and Protection Act in 1982. So, they started early, but the one thing that they did ignore for far too long was the interconnection between groundwater and surface water. And so in 2004, there was a big overhaul to that act that required the local natural resource districts to coordinate with the state, DNR, to put plans in place that would cover that. So not exactly the same situation that you all found yourself in 10 years later, but with any problem that you ignore for long enough, it's really hard to fix. And that's where we found ourselves when I joined the agency in 2006. So we had to play quite a bit of catch up. So I'm familiar with what y'all have been through here the last 10 plus years. I became the deputy director of DNR for the last 5 or 6 years that I was there. I was involved in a very intense interstate lawsuit that was the impetus for that overhaul, requiring us to take our head out of the sand and recognize that surface water and groundwater, at least in Nebraska, are highly hydrologically connected. I won't comment about California. So yeah, I came over to Olsson, actually with the director, Brian Donegan, at very similar times. And having gone through that experience, we really wanted to help water managers and make their lives easier, because we didn't have a very easy time when we were trying to do it. And so it's been great working on the Groundwater Accounting Platform. We brought our groundwater evaluation toolbox that we developed at Olsson that automates the use of groundwater models, and we put an open source license on what we call the GET engine, which is kind of the part that does all the work, and that's what does the work for the scenario planning part of the Groundwater Accounting Platform. Thanks.
All right, well, thank you, Jim. Yeah, and physics are on your side with the surface water groundwater. Policy space, as we know. All right, well, thank you all again for that great introduction. And just so the plan for this panel is for the next 10 minutes or so, we'll be having some questions for the panel members, but then get your questions ready, please, because we'll have about 10 minutes or so for audience Q&A. So we really encourage you to ask questions about what the experience has been like from these local experts, and then also about the platform. So, and then we'll go on from there. All right, so into some of the questions here, and we're sort of structuring these as some questions around the adoption of the platform, how it came to be that these districts and these local experts worked with their entities, local entities, to try this out and be brave, like we said. And then we're going to work into some how's it going and the current use of the platform, working with the community, trying to build a community of practice with this new tool, and then also then finishing with a look towards the future and what do they see in their crystal balls or crystal groundwater basins, what's coming and how this platform can help them with the challenges at hand in the future. So I think we'll just start as we go down the panel. Really, first question is, how did you or your district get started with the platform? And then how has the platform helped you in rolling out new policies within your agency and really helped with SIGMA implementation?
That means I have to remember. I wouldn't quite call it love at first sight, but I remember sitting on some webinars for Rosedale Rio Bravo. Is it coming through?
Certain child.
Test it. Hello? Oh, okay.
Mine's directional.
All right.
Yeah, mine's real
Love
close.
at first sight. Okay. Test it. Doesn't work. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll try this one. Okay, so yeah, I remember sitting on at least probably 3 webinars for Rosedale Rio Bravo, and on the GSA, and I was really just interested in. I was really intrigued by the novelty of being able to growers being able to log into a platform, see their accounts on a map, and see their water budgets, and the concept was in more or less real time. And I thought that was a great opportunity. And then toward the tail end of the webinars, there'd always be a presentation from Olsson on the scenario planning module. And at the time, it was discussing being able to run scenarios for adding wells or recharge sites. And so from the get-go, it seemed like a really great opportunity. We really liked that the Groundwater Accounting Platform was open source. We wanted to go into it with the concept of, let's develop something that we're not starting completely from scratch. We're building off existing tools and functionalities that are out there, but being able to expand on it in a way and tailor it to our specific GSA. So that was, I don't even remember the year. I probably was watching the webinars in 2021 or so. And so it's been a long time watching the accounting platform and getting to participate in it too. I think that mostly answers the questions, but one of the biggest pieces at the time too was putting the data in the hand of the growers and allowing them to make choices on how they want to manage their water budget. As a GSA, we can put policies together. We can, it's a rough role to be in, but in doing that, the idea is to give the growers and the water users as much flexibility as we can within the confines of what we have. And we're excited for the Groundwater Accounting Platform to do that. It's been a really fun process.
Right, so at the Merced Subbasin GSA, as I mentioned, they knew they were going to have an allocation program, and the GSA board, over and over, they kept saying, like, they identified it as a data gap that growers need to know what their water budgets are, and we called it parcel-based water budgets. And we put together a fee in 2022, and we even put money into that fee, like a category in that fee was how do we create these parcel-based water budgets that we could share with all of the growers over the 170,000 acres in the GSA. And we started talking about doing an RFP to find out all the different, portals and platforms that are out there. And then we heard, through the grapevine that, our neighbor, and Miagusa, as we call them, they were using the Groundwater Accounting Platform. So we called up EDF and said, hey, tell us more. And then we said, hey, can we join? And they happened to have a little bit of room to let us join as a pilot. What has been just the best in the Merced Subbasin about using this between both GSAs is we have a lot of growers who they're in MID, they have surface water, they're in MID, and they have lands that are outside of MID. So they are in two different GSAs and they're already facing two different, allocations. They're similar but not the same. And to be able to log on to the same platform, they have to go into two different geographies, but to be able to log on to the same platform and see all of their land in the Merced Subbasin has been just really great. We know they appreciate it, that they're able to do that. And so we didn't go through an RFP process because it was more important to have the same tool and the same resource as our neighbors and as our growers would have in their neighboring GSA, and so that's how we ended up with the Groundwater Accounting Platform. And that was probably in fall of 2022 is when we started knocking on the door of EDF, and they took some board action to join in 2023, and so from then we tried to move really quickly to speed up to where some of the other pilot basins were with the accounting platform as well.
So we initially, post GSP and for actually the final assembly of our GSP, we did a lot of ET analysis and parcel analysis and GIS analysis so that we could understand what we had and how to manage it. And in that context, actually, we put together a, what do we call it? I think we called it a grower decision toolbox or something, which was kind of like a small groundwater accounting platform so that we could play around with it and see what we wanted. And then we we gathered several different folks that had developed different kinds of groundwater accounting platforms, and we had a competitive bid, and that's how we landed actually on ESA, because at that time we weren't able to sign on to the existing program. But that was fine. We didn't expect to sign on to an ongoing effort or ongoing funding. But we knew that we were buying into a larger community of practice, an open source program, a hosted program that was not privately hosted. Our data wasn't going to go into a black hole where we'd have to figure out how to get our data if there was an ownership change or something else happened. And we found that as we were adopting this, it met several important needs. The first is, it forced us to do the planning to understand what our different land uses were, what our statistics were for parcels and so forth. So all of that fit in well with our science that we were putting together for SIGMA implementation. We knew that we had to communicate with growers about their allocations and their fees. It's interesting. You can work in a GSA where you feel like you have really good turnout and engagement, and we had like I said, we have our core growers really get it. But there's a whole bunch of people out there that are not going to show up for your meetings until you send them a bill. And then they show up. And they're not happy, and they're confused, and they're wondering what you're doing to them. And they're farming 40 acres of land that's been in their family since the 1860s, and you're going to make them take out trees, and it's going to potentially they're no longer going to be able to stay in business. I mean, this is real stuff. And at the same time, we were developing our incentivized fallowing program and our multi-benefit land repurposing program. We got a grant from DOC to implement that, along with our neighbors to the south did as well. And we found that we were able to add a fee calculator sandbox type of a tool that allowed us to not only explain these very painful fees to help folks understand those and help them understand their historical use and their current use, but understand the land use decisions and changes and water use decisions and changes that they might be able to implement to have a more sustainable position going forward. And that's been a great tool, and it's been a great tool to sit with growers and work through their particular parcel with them, their fees and so forth. It helps make everything more understandable, and it promotes engagement and discussion. Because, as a hydrogeologist and engineering geologist, I'm into the science. I like the science. I like the policy, but I've just found it more and more over time that it's really true that a big part of your success in Sigma, you can have the best policy, you can have the best science. If you don't have engagement, this is a social exercise. Trust is social. And if you don't have that, you're going to run into all kinds of difficulties. So the fact that we have maybe a somewhat, I want to say it's an intuitive tool, but let's say it's a somewhat complicated tool and story to tell, where we need to sit with individuals to help them to work through it. That's actually a good thing.
Thanks, Doctor. Maybe a variation, Jim. Since you have a little bit different vantage point, but you've experienced it in a different state, and also you've got to see how these pilot efforts have progressed. So yeah,
right. I wanted to comment briefly on the Upper Big Blue Natural Resource District, which was on the slide earlier. They put into place some rules quite a while ago that if the average water level in the NRD dropped to a certain level, they would have to go to allocations. And they had some variations to that allowed for pooling and whatnot. This is 1.2 million acres, 12,000 wells, and they started to flirt with that level and started to think, oh my God, how are we going to manage this if we actually get there? So this was about 2019, and this is when I met John Burns at Rosedale Rio Bravo, about 6 years ago, almost exactly, and we have been talking with them about their issue with if they did go to allocation, and we were able to stand up a version of the platform that does all of the pooling calculations for them automatically, which was going to be a really huge headache, because you can imagine with all of those parcels, and in Nebraska, most of the ground is farmed by tenants, and so it changes hands for every year. So anyway, just a brief comment on how it has been applicable in different geographies. They still haven't gotten to allocation yet, but they're hoping that through showing users what they're using, how the pooling works out for them, and whether or not they're living within that allocation already, that they'll never get there.
Yeah, thank you all for those insightful pieces of information, and sort of building on that. Matt, you said maybe it wasn't love at first sight, but how about from the grower perspective, and as you're implementing this and using it in these basins, what kind of feedback, positive or constructive, feedback are you getting from your groundwater community in your basins? Like, how's it really going? And a couple sort of pointed questions or specific questions after Matt, you take a crack at that. Mike, we heard that you put together some, a help desk or support functions for your growers. How's that been going? And then Lacey, you've been mentioning that you have more public-facing workshops, so if you could touch on those two variations of this question, that'd be great.
Well, love at first sight was a little tongue in cheek. I think if I wasn't there, I was pretty close.
Yeah.
And I don't, frankly, I don't know if growers are there the same way or not. It's the thing is that it's Sigma is a rude awakening for a lot of people, and even in our GSA, where we are a conjunctive use district, we have a conjunctive use district as an emergency. We have about 25,000 acres that are groundwater only, and a lot of the first efforts have focused on those people, and this is the first time. It's amazing. Even a lot of those folks, they have zero idea how much water they use. Period. Just none. They don't have meters. They know that they grow almonds or whatever they grow, and that's it. They turn a well, and that's it. And so we've had a lot of every time you talk to someone, you're spending at least half an hour just introducing Sigma, and then you're spending probably another hour talking about policies and everything else. So I think with all that said, once you spend the time and you do it nicely, people tend to come around. They don't necessarily like it, but they start to kind of understand what's happening and what the end goal is. I think the shortest answer here is that now that folks are looking at the data, they want more of it. They want it faster, and in our GSA, we have an extraction allocation. We understand that folks don't have meters on. Not everyone has a meter on a well today, and so we're using ET as an interim solution. We'll have meters in the long run, but we're converting the consumption to an extraction number. And there's some assumptions that go in there, and at the end of the day, what we're finding is that people want real physical numbers that they can understand, and I think in our particular GSA, they want to be able to see that number coming from the well. And it's not a discussion about what's better, ET versus metering. It's just it's a lot. I think it's a lot more tangible. But the big picture is small. Is that they want more, they want it now, and they don't really want proxies. And that's kind of that's what they want. So yeah.
All right, thanks, Matt. Lacey?
So I think it's really interesting when you go to Merced Subbasin GSA right next door, or Merced Subbasin GSA is not using metering. We're going with the straight OpenET and the remote sensing. And so when we first joined the platform and we wanted to kind of launch the effort, we also wanted to be really careful about how we did that, especially with the uncertainty around using OpenET back in 2022. And we were seeing Some neighbors even to the south of us were having there were lots of discussions about using that remote sensing data. And so we had a hand-picked grower group that we were gonna kind of demo the platform and start with. We picked growers who were engaged with the GSA, knew the allocation was coming. They were open to new things, open to technology, so they wouldn't necessarily just be negative Nelly about, just using technology. But they weren't also just gonna love it at first sight. And so I'll tell you, our first grower workshop, we brought them in, we brought the team out, did the demo, thought it was good, lots of questions, got them all logged in, and told them kind of going through it that we want you to leave here, test it at home. And one of the growers said, if you're not gonna group my parcels together, I'm not even gonna log into this until I can group my parcels together. And that just gave everybody in the room permission to never log into it until they could group their parcels together. And so the development team went and they made those changes very quickly. I think we did that meeting in June. They made those changes by November, and we brought that group back again into the room so they could see the changes that were made. And I think seeing that what they said was responded to and we made changes in the platform based on their feedback was really helpful, and I think it was helpful with kind of acceptance and using the platform. And so that grower group, we kept them involved for a little bit, and then in 2024 kind of launched it out to the rest of the public and sent out PIN numbers to everybody. A lot of those conversations that Matt was talking about, they get the letter in the mail and they call and say, what is Sigma? And so those are long conversations to get them to the platform. We still have lots of conversations about the platform and our technical advisory committee. They do not hold anything back on things that they like and things that they don't like. And what we've been able to do is take that feedback. Sometimes it's hard to rein it in the middle of like a public meeting, but if we can get them to, give us a one page on what your feedback is. Sometimes we get them in touch with the development team and we can make those changes and go back to them and say, here's how we responded to your feedback, and we're trying to make this what you like. And that has been, again, just really great in getting them to accept it and want to use it, and then tell their neighbors, yeah, it used to have this terrible, way that they did it, and then I told them how they needed to change it, and they changed it, and look how great it is. And that's actually really helpful, because that talk amongst their neighbors happens a lot in Merced, and it happens a lot in the rural communities too. And so we've had good experiences with getting really upfront feedback from growers in our meetings.
So I'll just echo what Matt and Lacey have said. We had the same exact experiences in East Turlock. With respect to the help desk was a functionality that was added, from our viewpoint, timely to the Groundwater Accounting Platform for one of the other agencies, I think. And then when it came time for us to implement our groundwater use fee, so we have two fees that went through the Prop 218 process. One is a benefit assessment per acre for irrigated and non-irrigated parcels, and then we have a groundwater use fee that we more recently rolled out. We started to get an inkling that we were going to get a whole bunch of requests for help, a whole bunch of questions, and we knew that we had to develop or roll out something like a relationship management software program or something. So I started looking around, and then Savannah Jaden suggested, well, why can't we adapt our help desk, and you can use that as your relationship management software. And it doesn't have as many bells and whistles, but it does what we needed to do. And we've gotten a few requests through the Groundwater Accounting Platform. Most of them we get through, we set up a helpline. We set up a support email. And after sending out our first invoice for our groundwater use fee, within about 6 weeks, I think we had over 140 requests for help. Some of those, a good number of them have been just, what is this? Can you explain it to me? And, most folks are happy with an explanation. I'm angry about this, what are you gonna do? Send me to a re-education camp next. We get a few of those and, we listen and we help where we can. Some people have problems getting onto the platform or there are bugs that they need to work through. Some people want help working through projects. And so what we've been able to do is start a help ticket for each one of those and log each response, and then that's searchable and you can move it from active to in progress to hold. And so we can track each contact, because the worst thing that can happen is somebody reaches out to you and they get an enthusiastic reception and then you ask them to forget about it. So that's been super helpful from that viewpoint. Just and it's not a fancy tool, but it's just really helped to have that. It's really helped the engagement.
Just a really quick anecdote on the power of monitoring and measuring water use in different NRD where they've started real-time water use monitoring. They don't have an allocation, but they just, in the interest of better water management, have real-time data collection at every well. And I heard from the producer that he was irrigating and a rainstorm blew in, and in the past he would have just gone to bed and not worried about it. But because he knew that well was being monitored, he got outside and turned the center pivot system off. So just kind of an interesting anecdote there.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
All right, and so we'll have one more question about, we talked about how you adopted the platform, how it's going, and then sort of what's next in the future. So after this, we roll through this question, there'll be time for Q&A, so get your questions ready, please. So, each of you, if you could give your perspective looking out the next 3 to 5 years as Sigma is being implemented, how do you see this platform will continue to be integrated into your activities? What might need to be changed? And then how does that connect to the larger water landscape in your basin or region? There's a lot of other things going on besides Sigma. Sigma's hard. So that's just, how does the platform in your mind fit into where you go next?
I'd like to say that in the next 3 to 5 years, the Merced Subbasin will be absolutely sustainable because of the accounting platform. We are wrapping up our first allocation at the end of this year. There's going to be a lot more tough conversations that we have, and then we'll be considering an allocation likely for another 3 years after that. And so I think the next 3 years, I think in the next few months and in the years that follow that will be the biggest test that we face yet from an accounting perspective. And it gets more real every day, and I think that's something that we have to remind ourselves constantly as we talk to the actual water users. So one of the things that I see coming in the future is it kind of relates to this whole more data now thing. I'm really excited. There's a monitoring module in the Groundwater Accounting Platform. I'm excited to get monitoring well data, particularly monitoring wells that have telemetry installed, get them feeding into the Groundwater Accounting Platform. And I think the ultimate, the end goal is really operationalizing. Sure, close enough. Making the data more operational. So we have certain things that we do on a regular basis, reporting to boards and committees, but we also have annual reports that we just submit to DVR. And I think there's a really great opportunity here that if you're managing all this data in this place comprehensively, it's a really great opportunity to provide outputs and exports that we can then run the model, fill out the annual report, hopefully spend less money doing that, less time doing it, but then also provide a better, more complete product.
So So for the next 3 to 5 years for the Merced Subbasin GSA, if creating their allocation program, which took years to make the policy, if that was kind of going uphill, the next 3 to 5 years, we are gonna be rolling downhill, and by year 5, we're gonna be rolling really fast, I think. Their allocation gives their allocation in like a 5-year bucket, so you could actually not reduce a whole lot in years 1 and 2, and then be really running out of water by 3, 4, and 5. And so I think that gives growers flexibility in the first couple of years, but then it really makes things tight as you go in 3, 4, and 5. We're trying to get folks logged on to the platform right now. We're sending letters. We're going to send a usage statement for 2024 pretty soon, so they can get a little bit familiar with it. At the end of the year, we'll send a 2025 usage statement that we're basing off of some work that Niegusa has done with their usage statements as well. But I think we're gonna see growers logging onto that platform and tracking a whole lot more like that. It's just gonna grow really fast, I think, in the next, by 3 years and by 5 years. Because if they're not, then they're gonna be really surprised when they get those, penalty bills that they've gone over their allocation that, because they weren't tracking it. And so I see that coming. I think the way East Turlock is using it with their fees is really interesting, and I think that's an opportunity for the Merced Subbasin GSA. And then also we have the multi-benefit land repurposing grant as well, and so we're doing that and incorporating maybe some scenario planning. And with that, we've identified a wildlife corridor that connects the Sierra Nevada to the Merced Wildlife Refuge through the basin in an area that has declining groundwater levels, and just really ideal to maybe start connecting those patches of fallowed land. And so incorporating that in and some of that monitoring with that could be really interesting with the platform as well. So it's what I'm looking forward to in the next few years.
Thank you.
I won't say it. I was going to say 3 to 5 years. That's just about my retirement. I had kind of taken to asking folks a couple of years ago. So what do you think sustainable agriculture is going to look like in the post-Sigma era? How would you envision it? And I like, Steven, what you said about a landscape. And I can't remember the exact words, but water landscape, a sustainable landscape. And our vision is really that we would like to transition our working lands to a place where they can continue and be sustainable. And through our MLRP program, that turns out to be a mixture of other benefits or repurposing that is integrated with sustainable agriculture. So we have MLRP programs like orchard swale rewilding, floodplain reconnection, flood flow spreading, that uses our particular landscape characteristics from the flatlands up into the low rolling foothills for water management and conveyance for sort of multiple benefits going into the future. So that's the big vision. The fact is, we're not going to make anybody do anything. Well, or at least we hope we're not. Backdrop, GSAs like to think of themselves as a resource management agency. If you're in an agricultural area, you like to think of yourself as an agricultural resource management area. You'd like to be the friend. But the fact is that Sigma makes you an enforcement agency if necessary. So we don't want to go there. So what we want to do is we want to communicate via incentives that make business sense for different people, how they can repurpose their land to less intensively irrigated use. And then once those incentives get us where we need to go, then we no longer need to pay the incentives, and we no longer need to collect the fees from people that make those incentives possible. There will always still be fees for our operation, but our goal is to get over the hump. So enter the Groundwater Accounting Platform. One of the key features for us was this scenario fee calculator where we could have different MLRP what-if scenarios that people can look at and say, well, what if I fallow X number of acres? What if I rewild my orchard swales? What if I put in a basin that makes it possible for me to collect and use surface water? What surface water credits would I get? What recharge credits would I get? How many, groundwater demand savings are there? And how does that reflect on my bottom line? So that's huge, and I hope to build on that further. And then we are developing, under our DOC grant for MLRP, an MLRP viewer, kind of, envisioning based on characteristics and GIS analysis of land suitable for different kinds of repurposing, what can you do on your land? So our latest thought is that what we'd like to do is cross-link that with the Groundwater Accounting Platform. And it can be as simple as, we'll click on this link and it takes you to another site. We don't have to have anything fancy. But I think those kinds of crossover uses with the gap and different functionalities that you have to have, rules and regulations that you have to implement, bills that you have to send, but then also using it as a visioning tool for how you can manage going forward, I think is really where I'm hoping that we'll go.
Yeah, and I guess I'll say what I'm really excited about is seeing the scenario planning functionality of the platform really expand. We've done a lot of foundational work, which included expanding the functionality from just mod flow models to the IWFM model that the department had developed previously. And it's set up, as Matt mentioned, for some simple type scenarios, adding wells, looking at new wells and potential that they might impact their neighbors, or you mentioned capturing surface water and getting recharge credits, really operationalizing that scenario planning from the modeling standpoint too, so that the data that's going into the platform can go into the models and vice versa, so that just to really expand the toolbox that's already there going forward.